one of you paid the 10,000 out of circulation, uh, there was that less of a circulation, and what you would find is that you couldn't conduct as much commerce as you or industry as you had otherwise, and you would need to borrow it back into circulation. So you'd paid interest out of circulation. You haven't accounted for any principal yet, but you have to borrow that back as new debt above your former sum of debt. Which really illustrates the principle when you think that, especially in the initial phases of any such debt, that you're paying practically everything against interest.
Hmm. So, yeah, I was using the two people as a make it small as we can, but basically it keeps expanding and expanding and expanding to a point where it just can't be done anymore. Terminal indebtedness.
Right.
Right. Studio's falling around me here. Go hey. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you have any questions, don't be afraid. However simplified you may think it is, do ask. And I'm sure Mike will have no problem in answering them for you.
There's hardly a question I haven't answered thousands of times over 43 years.
So I'm sure
it's a rare time that anyone comes up with a new question.
Okay, Mike, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What you have for dinner?
That is a new question. Nobody's asked me that before.
Here we go. Here we go.
The only trouble is I'm bankrupt to answer that question because I haven't had dinner yet. It's not dinner time.
See, you can leave it down to me, Mike. I will get a question at you that no one else has asked.
Now, the last one that I can recall that it wasn't a new question. It's only been asked about half a dozen times in 43 years. Was how would you finance gold under mathematically perfected economy?
Is that just gold or all commodities?
Just gold or other commodities that really truly don't get consumed or depreciate. In other words, you can retrieve the gold that's used in the context of computers and restore it to the circulation of gold, so to speak.
So you're talking about commodities unlike oil and stuff.
Yeah, mathematically perfected economy doesn't relate to commodities as the so-called stock markets do, which are opportunities for exploitation. This is about eradication of exploitation. We actually make it illegal for people to purchase things to, for instance, deny them to markets so that they can artificially drive up the price. And basically, in the end, what mathematically economy amounts to is trading our production for like measures of others' production. So, in truth, you're pretty much naturally restricted by free market evaluations to being as commerce is always comprised of trading production for production. The recipient of another's production is always determining that that's a relatively like measure. So you're really, therefore, restricted naturally by truly free markets to determining the value of production rather than exploitation. So mathematically perfected economy further eradicates exploitation by making it possible to finance any justifiable thing at no other cost than paying for the production that you consume of as you consume of it. So, for instance, say you were going to a trade school and you happen to be a brilliant machinist,
Mm.
And so you've used the CNC mill, and you're fully versant in programming one and machine technology. You know what the best cutters are for every kind of a process. However, massive the operation or unmassive the part, that you're producing. And they have a trade show at your trade school, and you produce something, for instance, it's got a number of operations in it. It might not be something that's actually an industrial, element of some industrial machine, but it's something that's difficult to do, and it demonstrates a great number of skills, and you got first prize in producing something with a given machine technology. And so always spying, keeping a weather eye out for conducive producers of anything. A fellow who's got a high tech company. He's got an engineer that kind of watches this trade school. He's said to the teachers, if you ever have a brilliant, student of this type, that type, whatever, who can do this, that, or the other thing, let us know about it. We'd be interested in employing them. And this company happens to farm out production of just such an item. It's not exactly the same, but it involves, maybe the same material and kinds of operations, and requires phenomenal quality, such as been produced in this prize-winning, school project. So he happens by it at the school fair, and he sees it, and he says, "Wow, that's just like what we do. That's an incredibly good job," he says, and he finds this student, and he says, uh, "Would you be interested in looking at some blueprints? We happen to have some parts manufactured. They've been quite expensive for us to procure, and I'd like you to look at the blueprints if you would, and tell us if you think you can make those." And so he provides some blueprints, and the student looks them over and sees that, I can knock these things out. And this gentleman from this company has no idea that this fellow has knocked out this part in 40 minutes. They're paying like 4 hours of shop time for each one of these similar items that they're procuring for some equipment that they produce, for example. And the fellow says to the kid, "Well, do you think you can make those?" And the kid says, "Absolutely." And understand that he knocked this out in 40 minutes, but what usually happens is you run, a prototype, and then you might improve your methods and your setups and maybe fixtures that you use, and you produce so many runs, and then you might refine your fixtures and processes yet again, and before you know it, you're knocking these things out in 7 minutes a piece at a fraction of the original cost. Well, he's produced this item in 40 minutes. It's even more complex than the part that this company wants made. The company's paying 4 hours of shop time for each unit, and there's only one shop they could find to make it to the standards that they wanted. So he asked this, kid, how much do you think you could make this for? And being a smart student, he indicates that he's not really sure. He wants to know how much the company is paying for these things. He's trying to get an idea of what his market is, and the fellow might let it out of the bag to that they're paying quite a pretty penny for them, but he doesn't say just what. So the student assumes, well, they're probably getting charged an hour and a half a piece. At least he figures conservatively. So if I come in under that, Maybe I've got a contract here. So he turns out the part. Turns out he can make it in 20 minutes. And he decides to just ask the guy if an hour of shop time for per part might work out for a contract. And without raising his eyebrows, of course, the gentleman from the company jumps on it because it's going to cut their costs on these parts by a quarter to 25% of what it was before. Besides that, the first one that this kid knocked out is just dynamite. It's like what they were always dreaming of. I mean, it is a really fantastic job. So, well, the kid's knocked it out in 20 minutes. He's got a contract for an hour apart. It's extremely conducive to the company. The gentleman says, are you interested in opening your own shop when you get out of school here? Yeah, and I graduate in a month, he says. Well, if you can operate on borrowed equipment or minimal equipment, we could possibly underwrite your establishment of your premises. We happen to need 250,000 of these a year. And the light goes on in the guy's head. He says, well, God, all I have to do is buy 7 of these machines and set them up and just interchange the parts. I can hire manual labor to do that. And I set them up, make sure they're running to tolerances, and I just keep these 7 machines running, and that's 250,000 of these things a year I can make. And so the light's gone on in his head, and under mathematically perfected economy, say each of these machines might cost, let's just say it's $10,000 a piece, but they last for 50 years, and so the cost of $10,000, 50 years into that, really reduces this machine to negligible costs. In truth, he can pay for all 7 of these machines in his first year of business. So he writes out a proposal to the Common Monetary Foundry. He submits a contract which is verified with the company. This could all be done in forms on like a web application which interface with the Common Monetary Foundry, where this company basically verifies that they're going to grant this much business to this young undergraduate of this school. And so he gets this equipment, and 6 months later he's producing these parts at every 12 minutes instead of 20 minutes. He's coming in way under cost. The quality has actually been improved 50%. The company is happy as hell. The cost of their equipment has gone down commensurably, because 4 hours is quite a cost. It's now been reduced to, the kid's still charging an hour of shop time, but he's producing them in 12 minutes. He's, five parts an hour. So, he's making 5 times the money he could have hoped for. He's never had to work for another company. Save all of his life, only hoping to make a down payment on these equipments. And he's in business from the beginning. And that's basically how things would happen under mathematically perfected economy. Meanwhile, he pays off all that equipment in, say, 2 years instead of paying it all off in 1 year. The company increases their contract because their markets can more afford their production now, and everybody's better off except the fellow who lost the contract because his work was less competent, you see.
So no matter what happens, mathematically perfected economy just sends everybody into a positive direction, really.
Right. It's the most enabling that anything can be enabling. But it's only rightly so, because all it does really is strip out the exploitation of the banking system, which isn't just a fixed amount of exploitation. It isn't just 10% interest, because it's multiplying every debt that's subject to the whatever the interest into a terminal sum of